Give thanks. Sunday school is growing. I really give thanks for that. So today, we're touching on a fundamental topic, fundamental principle, fundamental reality within the Qubtic Church, as it speaks directly to all of us, and reminding us what our purpose is as a church, reminding us what our purpose is as people, reminding us of our purpose with regards to our blood seed and who we are. And that is that we are indeed the royal seed. We are a royal people and a royal seed, and therefore we have to know our role as the royal seed. See? It's important to notice because, for example, sure, everybody at some point watched a little bit of the Olympics. They just finished, right? You're correct in saying that? Yep. Everybody, there was something for everybody. Who didn't like beach volleyball, could watch cycling, could watch track, could watch swimming. And they say a lot to say that at the games, every so often, they would show the royal family. Prince Harry and his brother, and the other girl who's doing the equestrian. She was the granddaughter, I think, of Queen Elizabeth, and it was a royal affair. And of course, watching that, I always have to ask and wonder, what makes them royal? What makes them royal amongst everyone else at these games? Or in the world, for that matter. And that's a whole other sermon in of itself. We're not going into that. But I'm saying all of that to say that no one has made it their business to tell the royal seed of the Most High who they are on a consistent basis. Right? On a consistent basis. It is said, but it's not necessarily repeated, it's not necessarily broadcasted so that we as a people can accept it. Because you could hear repeatedly and over again that you are the royal seed. But of course, when you leave here today, you're going to deal with bills, you're going to deal with family who don't want royals. They are quote unquote royals. You're going to deal with situations that make you doubt yourself. You're going to deal with all types of different circumstances that make you question, that make you sad sometimes, or even downright depressed at times. However, you have to, in all of these circumstances, remember and understand that your place within royalty is not only destined, but is here by way of your blood. So this isn't a philosophical reality. We're not trying to put crowns on everyone at Burger King and tell you you're king for the day. We ain't doing that. Right? What we're trying to explain is that this is something that has been watered down to the point where in Christianity today, it is echoed that you have to be saved by the blood. Only the blood of Jesus. And as I always say, and I will continue to say, as long as I have the privilege of speaking or preaching or teaching, if I came in here with enough blood in some buckets to sprinkle on all of y'all, and I said, you know what? Jesus came by, he left some of his blood, and today we're going to cleanse ourselves with that blood. I guarantee I'll be in here by myself with however many buckets of blood I would have brought in. You see? There's people, especially so-called black people, we love to talk. When it comes down to it, just like how we love to say, Oh man, I'm a carnivore. I love meat. But if you go around people who really eat meat, it happened to me in France. I was the only one who wasn't eating meat. Everyone else was laughing at me till we got around the meat eaters. Then they put that bloody meat in front of them and the runny eggs. The story changed. What's the vegetarian option? Because Bahamians just like chicken. Take them any restaurant in the world, they'll eat chicken. They ain't eat no kangaroo, they ain't eat no snake, they ain't eat no donkey. That's what meat eaters eat. I'm only saying that to say that when the actual reality of what you're saying has been presented to you, then you see it for what it really is. You see? So, the reality of your royalty is based within the very DNA and RNA that's in your blood, and it's something that we can all deal with. We can all accept that through the years there's been an inheritance of royalty by way of the blood. This is why in the Bible, anytime the angels came to deliver that seed, they came to the woman. They came to Mary, they came to Elizabeth, they came to Samson's mother, and many other women. And why is that? Why do you think that is? Why the woman and not the man? Because in the story of Jesus, Gabriel rolled up to Joseph in a dream. I'd be questioning that. You can see my wife in person together. There was a reason why the woman was being targeted. And that's very simple. We talked about it last week. The woman passes on what is called the mitochondrial DNA from mother to child. More specifically from mother to daughter, to daughter, to daughter, to daughter. To the point where any women in here, we would take your blood and we could trace it back to your mother, your grandmother, your great-grandmother. We could go back for generations of all of the women that have passed that seed on. That's why in Genesis chapter 3 and 15, it talks about the woman's seed, the serpent seed and the woman's seed. It doesn't say the man's seed. Because our seed over a period of years, it gets mixed up. It gets mixed up. Society has flip-flopped that reality by saying, if you don't have a male child, you lose your name. Then the reality is, if you don't have a female child, you lose that gene. You understand? So, we begin by making it very clear what this sermon is all about today. Because for us to speak of our royalty doesn't mean we have to downplay anyone else. See? The Bahamas won gold in the Olympics. That doesn't mean we're putting down any other Caribbean nations or countries, because we're celebrating our golden nights and our Olympic team saying, well done. That has nothing to do with us putting down anybody. We're just celebrating the fact that we are the best in the world at the 4x4. We are royalty in that regard, right? But in one of our publications here at the Qubtic Church of the Black Messiah, called The Original 12 Tribes of the Scriptures, on page 7, in the second paragraph, it reads, thus, the phrase 3 groups of the original 12 tribes, something that we're going to discuss today. The phrase 3 groups of the original 12 tribes represents the fact that all humanity, that's all humanity, was created in various ethnic groups so that we would be able to identify one another while appreciating the uniqueness which each family has to offer to the survival, development, and salvation of our species. So there's a reason why you have a group of black people, so-called, you have a group of yellow people, so-called, you have a group of red people, and you have a group of so-called white people. Of course, no one knows colors, but that's what we've been told, and I'm saying it that way so that we understand where we're coming from, right? So, the point that the Most High made each and every one of us of a particular genetic likeness means that there was a purpose for it. This is why I have a great issue with people who tell me that they are colorblind. That is a great insult. To tell me that when you look at me, you don't see my color. That means you also don't see my heritage, you don't see my culture, nor do you respect it. And you expect me to fit into your colorblind world. You see? And that's just not a reality. Alright? So, we were all created in different ethnic groups to identify one another. And this is one of the main realities that we have to face. And so far as we as a people do not know or cherish our identity. To say the word identity, the first word you hear is I. E-Y-E. That is the letter I, which when we did a test, we asked everybody to close their eyes. We asked everybody to point to themselves. Everybody pointed to their chest. Nobody pointed to their head, nobody pointed to their feet, nobody pointed to their knee or their elbow. They pointed to their chest, to the heart seat. Okay? Which speaks volumes of what you think of yourself, who you really are. As much as we place importance on intelligence by way of book study and the realm of academia, who you truly are, you point to your chest to appreciate and understand. So this identity also touches on our royalty. Now, in the original 12 tribes, I'm going to read a little bit out of here today, and then we're going to touch on the whole reality that we as Nubian Melaninites, or so-called black people, have been told for many years now that we are Gentiles. Which is simply saying that we are not this chosen people from this book called the Bible that the Most High made a covenant with. And we're going to touch on the word covenant and understand exactly why somebody would want to remove you as those chosen people who the Most High made a covenant with and try to supplant you to receive what you're supposed to be receiving. Right? So on page 3, it says, this is the original 12 tribes of the scriptures. The hungry minds of most members of humanity all across the globe are constantly searching for a religious identity. In every land, such as is found within the African continent, yet nowhere is this search for a religious identity more evident than in so-called westernized lands, such as the USA, Latin America, England, the Caribbean, and etc., which due to the kidnapping and brutal enslavement are often left to wander, seeking a true spiritual reconnection to the Most High Heavenly Father and their race. These so-called westernized lands, being melting pots of many nations, nationalities, religions, and religious teachings, often leave members of humanity, most especially those of the Nubian Melaninite family, partaking of everyone else's ideologies, since they have been stripped of their true Tamarian or ancient African identity. So, another, pet peeve is when slavery is talked about as if it's all done. It happened, get over it. That's the most ridiculous thing in the world. That's like telling a woman who was raped, she's supposed to just get over it. I don't care if it was 10 or 20 years, you never get over it. And no one has the right to tell you when you're supposed to get over it. So I don't understand how people expect to tell a group of people who have been through a 500 plus year Holocaust, okay, now it's time to get over it. That's ridiculous. During this Holocaust, we were stripped of our identity, which simply means we didn't know who we were. A blank slate was cast before us, and we have continued to throw everything at that blank slate to try to get something to stick. I had to be more than just a slave. Somebody had to have cared for me. It couldn't have just ended up in this place called the Western world, the New World, America, the Caribbean, wherever we landed. We couldn't have just landed here and not have had a story before this. That was the original question. Now in 2012, we have more information than we have ever had, explaining that yes, you do have a story. Yes, you did have an existence before slavery. Slavery is but a blip on the screen of your reality. But because we don't acknowledge this, those that want to supplant the royal seed of the Most High Heavenly One have utilized strategies to keep us away from understanding those stories. And by keeping us away from understanding those stories, they can present a representation of themselves, call it God, and tell you to depend on it. Because subconsciously what that does is it causes you to depend on anybody that looks like this image of God. Especially since in Genesis 1:26 it says that God created humanity in His image and likeness. So if you're giving me a white interpretation or picture of God, then His children must be white. Then His covenant must be with them. Only makes sense. I mean, Michael Jordan turned probably will get the new Jordans before your children. I mean, I'm just saying that daddy is Michael Jordan. Think you may get a couple before they hit the shelf to throw around under the Christmas tree or whatever. I think so. They have that link to the Father that allows them to have certain privileges that nobody would argue about, right? Would you argue if you saw a Michael Jordan child wearing the newest Jordans when they ain't come out yet? But how we get them? Does he enjoy? You would be a fool to argue that point, right? And that's what they wanted us as Nubian Melaninites to feel like when we saw everyone, not just the white man, every other ethnic grouping succeeding except for Africans. We were supposed to accept that this was our fate. Something that comes out of the Hindu caste system. They even pass it off in their entertainment world, whereby in order to film, you have to do what? You have to cast. There's someone paid to do casting. In other words, each role in the film has a person that's supposed to look a certain way or be a certain gender, and they're supposed to fulfill a certain expectation in your mind. So if they want to do a prison scene, Kimbo Slice got that right. Because he looked like the big strong prisoners, according to them. If they want president, they got to get any white man to play it. But not any black man to play it. There's a couple of black presidents now on TV, but they make sure, just like they did with the real one, that they have a certain look and a certain feel to them, something that's palatable, something that they could say, yeah, we can work with that. We can put our shopping in there. So I'll just see them too much to say. You know what I'm saying? Obama was perfect. Oh, his mother is white and his daddy's black. I love everybody. Great strategy. I can't hate white people. That means I hate my mother. Great strategy, right? So I'm saying all of this to say that image is key and very important in understanding the reality that is before us. So it goes on to say, now there are many religious identities which members of humanity, most especially those of the Nubian Melanite family, who reside in North and South America, Europe and Africa, and the Caribbean, have assumed in a search for who they and what their original religious identity was and should be. We say this because in this latter day and time, many Nubian Melanites, who are in fact the original three groups of 12 tribes, namely the Ishmaelites, Israelites, and Midianites, who as those of royal Tamarian or ancient African blood, survived as a remnant even in the countless phases of genocide and mass holocaust which we have had and continue to endure at the hands of many overt and covert forces. So instead of people telling you that when slavery is over, get over it, you must now begin to accept that you were the remnant that actually made it through. You were the ones that can now fulfill the destiny of the many who were persecuted, who were destroyed, who were separated, who were castrated, who were raped. Alright? You now have the responsibility of carrying on their dream of being able to live like we once did before, which is truly salvation. That's what salvation is. Because if you ask many people if they want to go to heaven, of course, everybody wants to go to heaven. Now the next question, to do what? Yeah, I'm going to go to heaven. Okay, great. Forever and ever and ever and ever again. What are you going to do forever and ever and ever again? Tell me. You're going to praise God and you're going to sing and forever? That will become hell. You're going to sing this again? I know it's a new song. I'm tired of singing. Nothing else to do with it. That sounds blasphemous, but if you really sit down with yourself and be real, that's true. Because you can't lure me with physical things in heaven like streets of gold and milk and honey, and without there being a physical reality as far as human nature is concerned. If milk is there, there must be cows there. If honey is there, there must be bees. If the people up there wearing robes, there must be cotton trees or silkworms. So we're talking about nature. That's like when they showed the skyline of Mars from the new, I forget the term that they use, but NASA has a robot on Mars, and they are researching now and trying to figure out how they can live on Mars and blah 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 blah. But they took a picture of Venus, Earth, and Jupiter. And Venus, Earth, and Jupiter look just like Orion's belt. Which is to say, the same way we looking up at Orion's belt, and we saying that's heaven. If we was on Mars, we'd be looking at this right here and saying that's heaven. So we're already in heaven. See? That's how we have to begin to think. This search for a religious identity has caused so many members of humanity, especially those of the Nubian Melanite heritage, to call ourselves by names such as Moors, the tribe of Shabazz, Muslim, Native American, Hebrew, and even Mormon, etc. However, the reality is that the first true church which holds the real religious identity of all Nubian Melanite members of humanity and all those other members of humanity who want honesty and true spirituality back in their lives is the Qubtic Church of the Black Messiah, which teaches the rites, precepts, and rituals of atonism, that which was grafted and altered to form the world's monotheistic beliefs. So atonism, again, is simply saying those things that you do to receive atonement. Alright? And of course, when we look at this word atone, we're also saying the word at one. The point that has been said many times and will continue to be said, because we have to always remind ourselves what we are becoming at one with. We want to become at one with the Most High. And the Most High is not something so far further than the furthest star sitting in some heaven that you can't reach. The Most High is represented by these very elements of hydrogen and helium and lithium and beryllium and the various tones of music, do, re, mi, fa, sol, la, ti, do, and all of the things that combine in different proportions and in different genetic potency to create reality as we know it today. The same elements that create what we hold in our hand as books is the same elements that come together to create the human body. It's the same elements that create the trees, the same elements that create this pond, but in different proportions. You see? So when we say that the first true church which shows the real religious identity, we're talking about a reality that everything, whether it's time, whether it's calculations, etc., all things have an origin or a starting point. Scientists today explain that the origin of humanity began in Africa with Africans. That's the origin. That's the starting point. Right? We can all agree with that. If you don't, Google it. Check it out. We don't expect you to believe us. Right? But the scientists are saying this of all different colors. Chinese scientists, European scientists, African scientists. There's no dispute about it. Okay? So it makes sense then that humanity's origin and the original people would have had an original language, an original culture, an original way of doing things, including an original church. Okay? So, not only do scientists say that Africans are the starting point or the Qubtic, why the Qubtic church, the axis of humanity, but we also know in genetics that it is impossible to get a so-called black person or a black race from a white person or a white race or any other race. But it is possible to have the so-called black race watered down into the various ethnic groupings that you see today. This is, again, is genetics. Alright? Everything didn't happen solely on this planet as far as why people are the way they are. But we're not getting into that realm today. Right? So, this reality then of a people that are seeking atonement, when we go to book of Genesis now, we see something. Genesis 9. This is the story of Noah. And in the Qubtic church, we understand that we, as the royal seed of the Most High Heavenly One, are in tune with an original covenant known as the covenant of Noach, which became Noah in this watered down version of our original stories. Okay, it's very important that you take the time to study Greek literature so that you can appreciate how closely the stories are in the Greek classical literature and the Bible as we hold it today. Literally took those stories and created portions of your Bible. Even though, as the Zondervan Bible says, these original stories came out of Africa and Sumeria. Yeah? So in Genesis chapter 9, of course, it's speaking about this covenant. Okay, this is after the flood now. Noah and his family have been saved. And now a covenant is being established. Right? So we start at verse 8. It says, and God spake unto Noah and to his sons with him, saying, and I, behold, I establish my covenant with you and with your seed after you. This is a specific group of people. Alright? And we got to stick a pin there because it talked about this seed. Alright? So if we just jump back to Genesis chapter 6 verse 9. Genesis 6 verse 9 says, these are the generations of Noah. Noah was a just man and perfect in his generations, and Noah walked with God. Noah was a just man and perfect in his generations, in his genes. That is the seed that has been passed on from before Adam and Eve. That seed is what they were preserving. Because remember now, when we deal with the story of Noah, this is at the point in the time where the world is in chaos as it is today. That every thought and every imagination of humanity was just wicked and lewd and evil, just like today. Right? So the Most High was saying, and this should make anybody ask the question, why couldn't God fix it? Why was it necessary for a flood to happen? Of course, we understand that they made it seem as if God was sending a flood to destroy his people, when in reality, Noah and his seed knew where to go to avoid the catastrophes that happen every 25 to 50,000 years on the planet. Something that still happens and is happening as we speak today. Some people call it a planetary shift. So there was no God standing over it, everybody, and saying, I'm going to destroy the planet. This happens naturally in cycles. Okay, but the Bible writers didn't want to explain that. So they just said, well, God did that. Alright? So Noah is perfect in his generations, and then they say Noah walked with God. Right? Just like Enoch. Yeah? They were a part of the earthly, what we refer to as the Meadow. Okay? Are those generations of the heavens and the earth. The generations of the earth created schools for their seed, because they knew that they came here and they delivered packages, like how Gabriel delivered packages to Elizabeth and to Mary and to Samson's mother. Packages was being delivered and children were being born with the seed of the celestial heavens implanted in them. This is why Yahshua can be presented. This is why those who walk with Yahshua can be presented, because these were families. That's why if you look at the 12 disciples, you're looking at a bunch of cousins and there's one big family in it. They have to keep it in the family. Same thing that happens today with the so-called royal family. That girl who just married the prince, you think he just allowed her to get married? Oh no, there was much blood testing done. You want to marry a commoner? Who is some people? That's why they didn't like Diana, but that's another story. So we go back to Genesis 9, right? Verse 10 now. And with every living creature that is with you. Let me jump back because we've got to make this clear. Verse 8, God spake unto Noah and his sons with him, saying, And I behold, I establish my covenant with you. So Noah, you and your seed. But then it goes further. And with every living creature that is with you. All of the creatures that you were able to save. Right? Of the fowl, of the cattle, of every beast of the earth with you. From all that go out of the ark, to every beast of the earth. And I will establish my covenant with you. Neither shall all flesh be cut off any more by the waters of a flood, neither shall there be any more be a flood to destroy the earth. And God said, This is the token of the covenant which I make between me and you, and every living creature that is with you, for perpetual generations. Perpetual generations meaning you have to live through your seed. And this is what we said, you don't have to turn there. But as we read earlier this morning in Psalm 22, we read from verses 23 to 31. Verse 25. My praise shall be of thee in the great congregation. I will pay my vows before them that fear him. The meek shall eat and be satisfied. They shall praise the Lord that seek him. Your heart shall live forever. Your heart shall live forever, perpetual. All the ends of the world shall remember and turn unto the Lord, and all the kindreds of the nations shall worship before thee. For the kingdom is the Lord's, and he is the governor among the nations. All that be fat, and fat meaning rich, fertile, right, upon earth shall eat and worship. All they that go down to the dust shall bow before him, and none can keep his own soul. You cannot keep your own soul. You must either have children, or you must have works that allows people to remember you, to keep the memory of who you were alive. So you can't do it on your own, alright? So this whole perpetual generations means that the first commandment, be fruitful and multiply and replenish the earth, that first commandment was the reason why that was the first commandment. Because without that commandment, nothing else matters. If you stop having children, the seed is not preserved, everything is for naught, right? But it goes further in verse 13. I do set my bow in the cloud, and it shall be for a token of a covenant between me and the earth. Now this is very important here, because we've all been taught that when we see the rainbow, that's God reminding us, hey man, He's not going to destroy the earth with water. Hey God. Right? What is this word bow? And what does it really represent? This word bow in the Hebrew is the word chashith. Okay, in the original sense of bending a bow for shooting. Hence figuratively strength, or the iris. The iris. Where does that come from? Iris, like the eye? So we're talking about rainbows. So how we get to the eye now? And this helps you to understand your covenant. We move into another of our publications in the Qubtic Church called The Power of the Ancients and The Power of the Ancients, Their Attributes and Elements in You. That's what we just talked about. All of the elements in the periodic table are already in you. But each one of those elements carries an attribute and a guardian angelic host over it that uncovered it. Simply saying a scientist that uncovered it. So in this particular book, on page 13, because remember we just read where this word bow means iris, eye. So the question is, there any ancient symbol which speaks of the black light? The black light refers to full spectrum light, all the way from cosmic rays down through the visible light spectrum, all the way down to electricity. All of the levels of vibration that you would refer to as either sound or light is referred to as the black light. Okay? And this picture here, which is a picture of a what? The iris. This part is the iris of the eye. Right? The tamarind, symbol of the primordial fire, or the black dot, which is the symbol of the iris and birth. It births and shows 3 forms of black light when it becomes the tamarind symbol for the letter A. So I'm not getting into that today. But the point we want to make is that this covenant dealt with an eye, iris. Okay? And what's the big deal, right? What's the big deal? Well, in ancient Africa, the Most High is symbolized by what? A sun. A sun. Some say Ra, which originally came from Ray. And of course, we can see that when we write the word, letters R-A, that is the word Ra. When we add the Y, it becomes Ray. So it's essentially the same word, right? But this sun, this shield, as it speaks about it in the book of Psalms, ties into your covenant insofar as the rainbow, which has 7 colors, speaks to the 7 layers of the atmosphere, but it also speaks to the 7 types of melanin of the people that receive the covenant. Right? This is important because if you are the people that are the recipients of the covenant, then you're supposed to benefit from it, right? Is the covenant supposed to help you or hurt you? So it should help you, especially if you look at the word covenant quickly. Okay, this word covenant is the word berith. Berith. Okay? And it means a compact, confederacy. Okay? It comes from the word, Hebrew word, bara, which means to select, to feed, right? To eat, to manifest. So it's something that provides for you. It's not something that you just walk around saying, but you're not benefiting from it. So this covenant was an agreement that allowed those who are receiving it to benefit from it. Because it didn't only talk about the people, it talked about all the animals too, which simply was saying that this sun was going to provide all of the necessary energy and life force that would allow for the trees to grow, that would allow for the fruits to be grown, that would allow for the animals to grow, that would allow for you to live in the land that the Most High gave you so that your days could be long if you honored your mother and your father. All of these things have to tie in when you start to get into the language. So, in the Tamarian sciences, we understand that there are 3 groupings, major types or groupings of melanin. The first being eumelanin. And I'll just write them so anybody who's taking notes. Eumelanin. These types of melaninites have sun heat genes, which have a high electrical charge. Sun heat genes. These genes are present within the bone marrow. Yes.
Every type, any type of melanin has sun heat genes.
Just follow me. Walk with me. I joined all of you at once. Right? Thus, these cells are very concentrated in their molecular weight and density and very absorbent, resulting in the appearance of dark brown to blue-black hued Nubian melaninites though originally olive tone green. Okay, and that's why when some of us have children, the babies have an olive tone green mark on them, which is letting you know which seed they originated from. Sometimes the whole bottom will be green. Yeah? I've experienced that, right? So the next grouping, and for example, Sheikh Antioch, who we know as a pharaoh of Africa, he was of this melanin type, right? Then you have the second group, which is the pseudo melanin, right? Which is also referred to as theo melanin. Those who have this type of melanin have mast cells or sun heat genes that are less dense, that are a less dense form of melanin, possessing a lower molecular weight and less of an ability to absorb and store energy. They manifest as having a yellowish undertone and brown to slightly reddish tints to skin and hair, like Malcolm X. So you can find that you have a variation between. Okay, follow me. Actually, follow me. Then there's the third. No melanin. Those that are albino and their albino offspring, which are found as defective gene that has found its way amongst all races, they are susceptible to cancers and certain other genetic disorders. Right? Now, from these three groups of melaninites, it further breaks down into 7 types, which ties into the rainbow, the covenant, the token, the reminder that you are the royal seed, that you are these 3 groups of Ishmaelites, Israelites, and Midianites, right? So even further, there are 7 types of melanin manifestations amongst Nubian melaninites that the guardian Al-Kami addressed long ago, which fall under the first 2 melanin groups. And there are 11 types of albinos composed of 3 groups, namely blonde-haired blue eyes, red-haired green eyes, and black-haired black eyes, who are grafted at different times in 11 different places or experiments, which came out of the 3rd melanin group, which was originally silver-haired with colorless eyes, called Binu in Tamarian culture. So out of that 3rd group, there are 11 to 12 different groupings of what today you would refer to as white people, right? That have very low amounts of what you would call melanin, especially on the surface of their skin. We have it in the brain, the heart, the kidneys, on some level, but none of us in this church today represent the original blue-black seed. So we couldn't stand here being racist by simply telling the truth, because we also telling the truth on us by saying we're not the original, right? So just quickly, the first group was of 7 types. So the first one being the original olive green undertone. These were the guardians before they arrived to Earth and rusted by way of oxidation, much like what happens when an apple is cut and oxidizes. Cut the apple, it turns brown. There's iron in the blood. Hemoglobin, you don't have enough iron, hemoglobin doesn't work, you become anemic, the blood can't carry the oxygen, it becomes painful, you could die. Okay? The iron core of the earth that we're breathing in, along with the water and oxygen, cause the rust. Okay? The second is the Nassau, or the one born black. Type 1, true eumelanin, or Ethiopians, Sudanese, West Africans, some Nubian Mennonites in America, England, and the Caribbean. These have very dark brown to black eyes and blue-black or dark brown skin with woolly hair and are rarely found to suffer from skin disorders or aging defects. This is black don't crack. Black don't crack. There's a reason for that. When you go into cracking, as your body starts to prepare itself for the hereafter, as in hair in the dirt after you're there, right? The gravity starts to take over, and if you don't have enough strength in the skin, your skin starts to sag. So those people who have less melanin will start to, you'll need what? A face lift, get it back in place, right? And this is why we have to make this clear, because there are those that even Yahshua spoke about in Revelation 2:9 and 3:9 that were calling themselves Jews, that were saying that they were part of this covenant. And the covenant of circumcision and the covenant of the promise. They were saying that they were part of these covenants, yet they're the ones dying from skin cancer. So it can't be, right? The second group is the Nassau. The third, the Namu, or the yellow sea. Yellowish brown undertone. Right? Reddish brown to very black skin with wavy hair, such as brown skinned Puerto Ricans, Nubians in America, Panamanians, Dominicans, and certain Caribbeans, and some Africans. So you can find that you have characteristics from more than one of these groups. Right? The fourth one, the Hamu, or the brownish shade, such as American Indians, some Mexicans, Malaysians, Philippines, Japanese, etc., with straight or hollow hair. The fifth being the Tamahu, birth and ghost-eyed, white/living. They have black hair, near tannish skin, and black eyes, like those who reside in the Mediterranean region today, such as Italians, Spaniards, Greeks. Their skin ranges from pale yellow to ruddy red. Certain Mediterranean and pale East Indians in this family run the risk of developing skin and organ diseases because of less melanin. Right? Then you have the sixth group called the Benu. And this is ghost. Blonde to silver hair, blue eyes. Known as the Flugelroy, the albino. And this is seen across all races. Right? And then you have another group of Benu, the seventh, ghosts, who are red hair and green eyes, freckles and pale skin, and they're called the Feuerborg. Alright? So everybody is a part or takes part in this covenant at some level. However, there are those who benefit from it more than others. Even though we are considered black people in this room, there are still others that are darker than us and can benefit more from the properties of the sun than we can. And that point has to be made, because we're not, this sermon today is not to belittle anybody or to say that anybody is better than anybody else. It's just a simple reality that in nature there are some things that are better equipped for a particular environment, some things that are not. You go in the water, the shark got you. Shark come on land, you got him. See? So this covenant was speaking to a specific group of people. This was speaking to Africans. Okay? And those Africans, as we have been called many different things, as it explains here, again in the original 12 tribes, whereby when we look at the question that says, why does the Qubtic Church use the phrase three groups of the original 12 tribes? It reads, when we say three groups of the original 12 tribes, what we want all members of humanity who read this to realize is that the manner in which so-called modern historians group entire nations of people under the terminology tribe, while at the same time making it seem as if the term tribe is a nominal term, is a major problem when it comes to unraveling the great mystery as to the origin of humanity and our genetic link to the Most High Heavenly Father and their race. So, when you think of the word or hear the word tribe, you think of maybe just a group of people or village, because they've made the word tribe, as it says here, a nominal term or something that you just think of by name, but you never think how many Yoruba there really are, how many Maasai there really are, how many Effendi and Nakia. You don't think about the hundreds of thousands or even millions that actually exist, right? As such, all members of humanity must come to fully understand that these three groups of the original 12 tribes, along with their genetic progeny that has been scattered all throughout the Western Hemisphere, being Nubian Melanites, were and still are each made up of various clans, clusters, and subgroupings, each numbering in the hundreds of thousands to millions, yet all sharing the same foundation of true culture, while possessing a long history of nation building, art, medicine, musical composition, architecture, agriculture, tribal tales, and astronomy, etc., which was and is still uniquely beneficial to each region of the world in which they are still found today. So, once we understand that in order for us to get back to the point now, whereby we can once again control our destiny, because that is what brings us salvation. You know what the word salvation is in Hebrew? Yahshua. Yahshua. So that's all we're saying. In order to be saved, in order to reach what we are calling heaven, and this heaven that is a place of milk and honey and all these different physical things that they're luring us with, it's simply saying we need to build a land for ourselves. But we can't come together with the same mentality that we have today, because we'll come together and we'll try to mimic again. And you'll have people trying to question, well, why are you doing it this way? The Chinese don't do it this way. The Americans don't do it this way. We have to first of all accept the reality that our great ancestors have left formulas for us, have left plans for us. One of the first things they're telling you is, you must accept that you are royalty. And then you have to learn how royalty plays. Watch the royal family. Do they go around asking people how to dress or what to do or how to talk or where to be? No. They tell you what they're going to do. And this is why it's important for you to reclaim your rights. This is why recently when I went down to the prison to visit an inmate, he said, oh, no, Pastor Eneas, you have to remove that ring in your nose and the air. You don't let men back there like that. I said, well, you all know about prison more than me, so help me out. Is it a security risk? So I'm going to go back there and they say, yeah, the dude back there is rip out earrings, try to cut your throat, and take it off. Maybe you can't stop him. What's the reason? So I said, you said you don't let men back there with earrings, so women have earrings? Well, yeah, but you know, it's just a policy. It's a regulation. I'm talking about a woman's policy. So I said, Mom, I understand you cannot give me the answer that I need. That's not your job. Please bring someone else so that I can ask a question. Because I don't think it's part of your policy to deny me my religious rights or my human rights. That's not your policy, right? No. To cut a long story short, once the head chaplain is able to come down, he looked at it. Let him go, he's fine. We were able to get past that obstacle, because one thing I told him was, I said, sir, when I was ordained, these ornaments were placed on me. This is a part of me. So for you to tell me I cannot wear these is to tell me I can't go back there. And the only reason I'm here is because an inmate that is interested in being a part of our church and is interested in reading our literature, you cannot deny him the right to see his pastor. And then of course I will allow through. But I only told you that story to say there are going to come times in your life as the royal seed, people are going to question that. I'm not saying you're supposed to go right, I'm royalty, cross your chest, or put it on your car. I'm saying do royal things. Understand what it means, right? And we're going to end by understanding the responsibility of royalty in the book of Psalm chapter 82. We read from verse 1. Because after you have picked up your own cross, after you have received the crown of life, right? And those things together making you royalty, then you must now know your role. Verse 1, chapter 82 of Psalms. God, or Nassau Elohim, standeth in the congregation of the mighty. He judgeth amongst the gods. How long will ye judge unjustly and accept the persons of the wicked? Selah. How long are you going to allow people to tell you that all you was a slave? That all you could ever be was somebody who went to college, come back, build some apartments, and leave them to your church. I'm not saying that's a bad thing. I'm just saying that's not the only thing. Right? Defend the poor and fatherless. Who are the fatherless? Who are the poor? We all are on some level, because we don't know who our Father is, the Most High Heavenly One. Do justice to the afflicted and needy. We've all been afflicted, and we all need something to help us to get back to where we need to be. Deliver the poor and needy, rid them out of the hand of the wicked. So it's not enough to just know this information. You must be the example, and you must build institutions and build things for people to get themselves up out of the slums, the mental slums that they live in. Right? Verse 5, they know not, neither will they understand. That should be fine. The how you say it? The Qubtic. Yes, we understand. You've never heard of this. This is something that hasn't been around for 3,500 years. We don't expect you to just know what it is. Our job is to make sure you know. Right? They know not, neither will they understand. They walk in darkness. All the foundations of the earth are out of course. Let's read right back into the days of Noah. That's what it says in the book of Matthew 24. Yeah? Then verse 6 says, I have said, ye are gods, and all of you are children of the Most High. So in this verse, it's being said the same thing we saying today. You are royalty. Right? You are royalty. But then it goes on further to say, but ye shall die like men, and fall like one of the princes. You shall die like men, and fall like one of the princes. Arise, O God. Arise up, you mighty people. Judge the earth, because you know how things are supposed to be. So you're not supposed to be as a Khalifa, as a successor, as someone who has inherited the earth. You're supposed to be the one who's explaining to the world what is supposed to be going on. If we don't take care of this planet, we won't have anything else. That's why people don't care about the earth, because all they think about is going to heaven. The Bible says the meek shall inherit the earth, not heaven. Right? Arise, O God, judge the earth, for thou shalt inherit all nations. All nations. And it speaks of Revelation chapter 12. When it talks about those 144,000 being from the tribes of Israel, And then afterward, all nations will find atonement. We are the gate. We are the doorway of the Most High. If we don't do our job, as we spoke about on Wednesday, the blood of those people are on our hands, because we know better. Once we have done our job, however, for those who choose not to listen, their blood is on their head. So up, arise ye mighty people, you royal seed, and let us take our rightful place in humanity. Now don't be afraid to be successful. Don't think because you go into church that you're not supposed to be successful. We need successful politicians, doctors, accountants, plumbers, carpenters, garbage men. We need people who think with royalty at every level of society so that we can build our heaven on earth. Otherwise, it's all for naught. And it's not all for naught, right? Can't be all for naught. With that I say, Amen.